Windhorse is our innate ability to uplift ourselves and our environment by giving rise to a positive energy that is both relaxed and disciplined. Since 1981, Windhorse Community Services has integrated this understanding with modern conventional therapies, meditation, and contemplative traditions in the development of at-home, whole-person mental health recovery. Windhorse Journal is dedicated to the mission of communicating decades of clinical and personal experience to professionals, educators, students, and anyone seeking recovery options. Please join the dialogue.
Welcome everyone to this podcast of the Windhorse Journal. I'm your host, Chuck Knapp, and today's topic will be the 8th entry in a series on basic attendance and the functioning of the roles of a team. Today, we're actually bringing all the roles together into this discussion to talk about how a team works. And I'm really pleased to be joined by this very distinguished group of Windhorse practitioners. I'm going to begin by reading your bios. Jeannie Christensen, MA, she, her, has been with Windhorse Community Services since 2004. You currently serve as an intensive psychotherapist and team supervisor, and for many years before coming to Windhorse, you worked as a psychotherapist and case manager at the local community mental health center here in Boulder. You also are lead persons in admissions, the title being, Jeannie?
Admissions Administrator.
Thank you. Jack Gipple, MA, LPC, CAC 3, he, him, is our clinical services manager. Jack, you also taught in Naropa's contemplative psychology department for 10 years and have been affiliated with the Boulder Shelter for the Homeless since 1992. In 2014, Jack, we co-authored and published an article called titled Windhorse Treatment, Group Dynamics Within Therapeutic Environments. And I think we've worked together since about 1999. Becca Davis, Master's in Divinity as well as Master's in Clinical Mental Health, she, her. Becca, you've been working at Windhorse since 2009. And I think as your degrees indicate, you have a really diverse background in working with people. And I think as you're saying here, you appreciate all the various ways that people make meaning in their lives. You're originally from the East Coast and you've lived in Colorado for 23 years and share a home with your wife and dogs. Rebecca Diaz, MA, LPC, she, they, has worked at Windhorse Community Services since the fall of 2019. You were first hired as a team counselor, and soon after completing your Naropa counseling practicum with Windhorse, you began working as a team leader. You believe social identities are sacred: race, class, gender, ability, sexual orientation, difficult states of mind and expression. They welcome, celebrate, and invite clients' social identities into the healing process. Connor Hollingsworth, he, him, MA, moved from Chicago to Boulder in 2014 in order to pursue a master's in music at the University of Colorado. At that time, you began a 2-year tenure as a housemate with Windhorse and have since moved on to team counselor and assistant team leader roles. The philosophy and contemplative approach of Windhorse has proven to be a thoroughly harmonious counterpoint to your parallel career as a freelance musician. And Connor, you work in classical, bluegrass, swing, all kinds of stuff, musical.
I'm a bass for hire.
Bass for hire, yeah, there you go. All right, Lori Heinzelman, PhD, she, her. Your work background is in community services, education, and communications, and you earned your PhD in linguistics from the University of Colorado in 2009. In 2011, you joined us at Windhorse in the role of a housemate, and in 2013, you transitioned out of that role and was hired as our human resources and facilities administrator, while also doing part-time basic attendance on 2 clinical teams. In your spare time, you are a remarkable photographer, an amateur singer, and guitar player. Earl Sugarman, MD, he, him. attended medical school at Duke University, and after completing psychiatric residency at the University of Colorado Health Sciences Center, you served as medical director for the Jefferson Center for Mental Health and then for the Behavioral Health Program at Boulder Community Hospital. You've been in private practice in Boulder, Colorado since 1989 and are board certified in psychiatry. Earl, we've worked together since about 1990, and you were actually one of the co-founders of Windhorse in that group where we launched this thing. I just want to say a little bit more about your role as a psychiatrist. You were part of a series on psychiatry and integrating that into teams earlier in our journal. But you, I think, take really special care to incorporate advances and changes in psychiatric medicine while always being careful to explore the lowest levels possible for medications, including how to help somebody be medication free when possible. You also select or incorporate selected nutritional supplements when you can, and you also have a willingness to utilize effective alternative approaches to achieve health and wellness with our patients, your patients and our patients. So thank you all for being here. And Jeannie, would you like to take us away?
So let me begin by talking about the various roles on this team. I am the team psychotherapist. Becca is the team leader. Lori is the housemate. Connor and Rebecca are both team counselors. Jack is the team supervisor, and Earl Sugarman is the psychiatrist. So yeah, this whole discussion is based on how a team works. And the story I'm going to tell is based on a real client that Windhorse had. And then all of us here represented today can speak to the various roles on the team. So I'll just tell you, and I wanted to tell you that any identifying information has been changed. So yeah, this is based on a true story, but some of the details were changed. And so I'll give you a brief description of the client. Lisa is a 25-year-old woman with pronouns she and her, who is from California. She was referred to us from a residential treatment center there following a 4-month stay. She was being treated for bipolar disorder and ADHD. She had also struggled with addictions in prior years, but she had been off all alcohol and drugs for the past 2 years. She graduated college with a degree in theater. Her mother, Terry, paid for her treatment, and she hoped her daughter would become more stable and independent through her time with us. Lisa hoped to make friends and get a job, perhaps find a steady relationship with a man. She also hoped to return to acting, singing, or modeling as a long-term goal. A team was formed to have 2 psychotherapy sessions per week and 9 hours of basic attendance per week. She had a number of psychiatric medications that were prescribed, and the team worked closely with her psychiatrist. In the beginning part of treatment, it was kind of a whirlwind. Initially, upon arriving to Boulder, Lisa experienced a great deal of freedom compared to the tight container of her residential treatment. She immediately began slipping around her medications and tracking them. The team had started her with independent meds, meaning that she was in charge of her own prescriptions. She also began smoking marijuana since it was available in her neighborhood. She quickly destabilized and needed a brief hospitalization. Afterwards, the team structure needed to increase, and so a housemate was added, Lori, plus 12 more hours of basic attendance. She was also put on flexible medication support meaning that she was supervised in filling her med minders once a week. And we kept her prescriptions in a lockbox in her apartment. So that's the kind of the beginning stage that was set. So maybe Becca, you could speak to what it was like as the team leader in these beginning stages, or what it might have been like working with Lisa.
Yeah, so just to say a little bit about what a team leader does, it's kind of like the organizing principle in regards to making sure housing is in place and schedule is in place, and kind of the communication with everyone to see that, you know, Lisa had the support she needed. And I remember when Lisa came into town, we did not have an apartment right away. So, and then also a part of my role was communicating with the housemate and supervising the housemate. And so, you know, getting the schedule. And then when we realized too about the medications, that was also something that I worked out with Lisa in regards to how we could support more regular, consistent taking of medication, and getting a household together that felt conducive to the beginning of relationship and going forward, and a lot of communication with all the parties, really, of everybody on the team. And yeah, I'm not sure what more to say. I know that you and I were in contact quite a bit when we realized, like, oh, you know, Lisa's experiencing a little more freedom, and quickly realizing, like, we need to be a little tighter in regards to how we're in communication, and to support Lisa in stabilizing and landing in Boulder.
So Becca, that was, appreciate the description of your role and what the early tasks were. So you, sounds like you helped actually get the house, you know, find the apartment, get food, make sure the medications were organized. And was Lisa having a hard time remembering taking medications, or was that an issue?
Partially, I think partially too, the freedom of, like, not being watched, or, you know, in an environment where there was a lot of container, really, and a lot of rules, and that is less the case when somebody's living kind of in an apartment in a town, with some support. And depending, I think we can adapt, you know, not just with Lisa's team, but on other teams. I find that part feels individual, like how much container is healthy and how much container is too suffocating, and sort of finding a balance between those two.
One thing we discovered, you know, with Lisa having been in a lot more tighter structured situations, those addiction issues kind of weren't in the forefront. And then here in Boulder, with that level of freedom that she faced, yeah, some of the issues with tracking medications were organizational issues, perhaps from her ADHD. But some of it was, remembering that she could kind of tweak things in a way to create different states of mind. So maybe taking more of something than she was prescribed, not taking something that she was prescribed, all of those kind of combinations started to appear when she was in charge of her own medications.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I'll add too, as the psychotherapist, she was so wanting help and support, relationship and treatment. And so one of her strengths was that she was really eager to engage in therapy and get that support and help. Not all of our clients are that willing of a participant in their treatment team, but she really was. And so that really helped our work together. So she always looked forward to our therapy sessions and was open to exploring herself and what's happening. And so yeah, we were able to form pretty close relationships pretty quickly on the team. Would anyone else like to talk about their role in relation to the beginning treatment?
So in my role as a team supervisor, the points you all are making are really good, and from the mind, or the view of the team supervisor, who's, you should say that my role is further back, so I'm not seeing Lisa as often as the other people. Typically, well, there's various ways I don't need to go into, but there are times I would see Lisa and the client, but a lot of times I'm back further, and I'm relating to all the team members, and also to the family. After the admissions process, I'm the main contact with the family, and so a really important thing is setting up the team. We're in the process of creating the patterns of communication and helping people understand the roles, and helping the client and the family understand the roles within the team. So that's a lot of my attention is on that. But I think an overview of the way I look at the team is I'm trying to create a learning environment, where when we're not just trying to control just to control the identified client. Of course, we want to keep them safe and everyone's safe around, but sometimes in the service of keeping things safe, it becomes a license to just control our client, and just to control Lisa. So clearly, we didn't do that at the beginning. We didn't completely lock her down and control everything. We want to create. We're always looking for the right balance between freedom and containment, and form that she can then learn within. And that's essential. That's the outcome of Windhorse team. We're not just a holding environment, we're a learning environment. So that's something as the team supervisor, I'm really looking at. How do I, relate to the client through the team and through an accurate team constellation surrounding Lisa in this case.
And Jack, you mentioned that you're the primary contact with the family. That's by what you're saying, that extends to the family as well, I assume.
Yes, of course. Yeah. To first they have to get to know me, they have to get to know the team. And there's kind of the professional level of that, but ultimately just the nature of Windhorse is there's also a personal connection. I often form close personal connections, or at least mutual respect, with individual members of the family. Often it's the parents, but not always. And then I'm trying to understand their family system and help understand where they're coming from on a bunch of different levels, and especially not to shy away from money. That money is very real, it's always part of the equation of what we're dealing with. And so I need to be someone they can talk with about the money and the cost of treatment. You know, it has to also, the treatment has to be, you know, appropriately balanced and scaled to, you know, fit what the client needs, but also what the family can afford, you know.
So the team met Lisa in various orders. Jeannie, I think you were really in there early, and I think the team counselors, team leader, they're all, we get everybody in contact as soon as possible. Laura, you came in a little bit later once we figured we needed more structure. Earl, you were pretty early on meeting her, I believe, and just curious what it was like for you to meet and start to understand what we were doing.
My first meeting with Lisa was about a week after she arrived in Boulder, and about 2 or 3 days after being discharged from a brief psychiatric hospitalization at our local community hospital. Jeannie was with us, as she has been for most of my meetings with Lisa. And I remember that in first meeting with Lisa, she was kind of irritable and unhappy and pretty pessimistic about the whole prospect of starting a new phase of treatment and having just come out of the hospital again. The hospital had sort of indicated they felt that perhaps overuse of a prescribed stimulant medication and a prescribed anxiety medication that had been used in residential treatment, but then were left to Lisa's own devices when she arrived in Boulder, that overuse of those things may have contributed to the destabilization, and they discontinued both of those medications. So there was kind of an immediate dilemma about where to go with those things. There had been a diagnosis of ADHD, and Lisa had said, "No, the stimulant helps me get my day going and helps me get organized, but it makes me irritable by the afternoon." And also that she was way too anxious to go without the anti-anxiety medication sort of right out of the chute into Boulder. So those were things we focused on in that first meeting of, well, what medicines would we continue and how would they be managed? And this is where the idea of having some medication supervision came in. And with the medication supervision, I was comfortable with restarting the anti-anxiety medication. That's kind of how we got started. So it was a sort of uncomfortable meeting. Things got much more comfortable, and I think we developed a really good working relationship over the next several weeks and several months. But that was the first meeting.
Curious also, Earl, how is your work integrated with the work of the rest of the team?
Well, for me, the team provides a whole lot of bandwidth on trying to understand the day-to-day experience and of the client, of Lisa in this case. I just have a 25 or maybe a 50-minute meeting, and maybe I would have one a week in the beginning or less frequent after that. It's a very short little window in time. I've got what Lisa could tell me about how she was doing and what her experience was, but the Windhorse environment has the richness of the team counselors and the psychotherapists and team supervisor, all of these folks having substantial contact and interaction throughout the day. So that's available to me. And so I've got a much bigger picture and a much richer picture of what the challenges are and what's going well and what the strengths are and what the liabilities are. But that all has to evolve too in the beginning of the team as we're getting to know each other and as the team's getting to know the client. So starting to weave that together into kind of a more coherent picture, kind of happens over the next several weeks and several months.
The whole team would meet together once a week for a team meeting, and Earl, you would join once a month to be with the whole team and hear from everyone about how things are going. So that was really helpful. To share that information back and forth.
Yeah. And then having you in my meetings with Lisa that were initially weekly, you could carry that, Jeannie, from the team to me in those meetings.
Yeah, that's so valuable. If it's just a client with their psychiatrist without a team member present or without that other information from other team members coming into the mix, it can be really limiting with what you know and what is also tracked back, to the client. So that assistance, it seems really, really, really powerful and valuable, both sharing information to you and then sharing information back to the client and helping her track that. It's really important.
One of the things that, Earl, you named and it has started to be named here is the development of a relationship with a person coming to us. And Lisa was really was a very relational person. And Jeannie, you started having a very, very strong connection right off the bat. Likewise, Becca, everybody.
There were some very distinct changes that happened from having a pretty full-blown manic episode that really manifested in a lot of anger and irritability and entitlement. And that shifted over time after she became stable again. So your initial impressions of her were colored by that, coming off of an episode.
Yeah, quite strongly.
I think also that like a lot of people have really negative relationships with psychiatrists before they come here. And the relationship is more like a really top-down, very impersonal, like this is what you're taking, very short meeting. And so I think a lot of people first meet you and are like, really defensive. And anyway, and I think that changes when all these relational pieces of like having the support of the therapist and in the meeting, knowing that their best interest is being supported and looked after. And, a lot of us now have relationships with you too, Earl. So it's sort of like, we trust that. And so anyway, I think that supports people who maybe historically have had really negative relationships with their doctors.
I think it's actually one of your strengths, Earl, as a clinician, that that a lot of the time when people are coming to you and you are very skilled in developing alliances with people, as opposed to some kind of control situation.
This was an interesting kind of set of blips because the way I remember it, and again, I'm just riffing here, this doesn't necessarily maybe it orients us to recorded, but like the first meeting was kind of okay. They were in a rough patch and all right. And we kind of got through that, but then there was that next manic episode. I think it was when we resumed some stimulant medication and things blew up and they got pretty hostile, not so much towards me, but towards the team. And that really provoked a lot of kind of protective reaction on my part. And I was convinced that this person was a jerk and was, kind of not to be trusted and so forth. And I got over that, or maybe to some degree they got over that, but I remember kind of a roller coaster for myself.
Mm.
Which is a real relationship. I mean, the whole team we're talking about this, what could look like a kind of clinically contrived situation, but what you all are pointing to is like, then you actually had real relationships with them, through your role, and you, in this case, Earl, is real. It includes when they bug you and you don't trust them. That's part of a real relationship and working through it.
Yeah, when a person comes to a Windhorse team, they have a lot of people to form relationships with, and they're not sure about their level of trust. And then the team members also need to be able to trust the person. And so all of that's happening at the same time in this beginning phase of treatment. And so, Lori, I wonder if you could speak to what it was like getting to know Lisa, or, in this case, someone like Lisa as a housemate, and just what that experience is like from your perspective.
Sure. And just to start by saying that, a housemate is kind of an unusual role within mental health, and it's really just being a stable and supportive person that lives with the client in their home. It's not a clinical role, but as a housemate, you're always aware that the overall environment is therapeutic. You're accountable to a team. Team relies on you to share information because you as a housemate spend so much time with the client. And then you just go about like living your life in a healthy way, modeling, rhythms of healthy eating, sleeping, activity, downtime, etc. And just, joining with the client in those just daily rhythms, the most mundane things in a household. And just, again, as with all the team, building a genuine relationship with them. It helps if there are common interests. So Lisa, for example, was a creative person, theater and music and things like that. And so that was a point of common ground that we could build on. And I just want to say that it takes an incredible amount of trust by the client to welcome all these people into their life all of a sudden, and someone living in the same home as they do. And again, in Lisa's case, Lisa had moved from another state and had a temporary home in an apartment, but it is considered the client's space, but the housemate needs to inhabit that space fully too. And it's a matter of just working together around, okay, who are we as two people living in this same space? Like, what do we like as far as decor, and what are our rhythms, and what do we like to eat, and all those kinds of things. So yeah, and you hope you like each other and jive. And it's tricky, I think, too, for the client, because you're not just someone living in the space. You have this sort of reporting relationship to the rest of the team, and you're not a spy by any means, but the team relies on you to keep your antenna up about anything that could be unsafe or worrisome or whatever. So it's walking that line of being a friend, but also I'm a therapeutic friend. I've been identified as somebody who could potentially help this person to grow, and you move from there.
Thanks, Lori. And with the team counselors, Lisa, was really open to doing things with team members, and needed a lot of help and support as well. And so, initially she came to Boulder without a car. And so going grocery shopping was important to do, and learning about local trails to hike on, and activities that she might want to engage in was really important. So I wonder, Connor, could you speak to, from the point of view of doing basic attendance, what that might have been like for you, working with Lisa, getting to know Lisa?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, as a team counselor, I think Rebecca and myself end up spending, a lot of time with Lisa, and especially following her hospitalization, when the number of hours of basic attendance were increased. So there's a lot of opportunity for kind of ups and downs, and a lot of mundane kind of just day-to-day life stuff. So I was drawn to Lisa's interest in singing and theater. So I kind of use that as a way of building relationship. So I would often bring my guitar to shifts, and just to at least create an opportunity if Lisa wanted to work on any music or anything like that. But also a lot of our time together was kind of just getting out of the apartment. Like you said, kind of, if not hiking on a trail, just driving around and kind of exploring her new environment. Maybe getting something to eat, maybe getting some groceries to bring back to her place and make a meal. But also just a lot of just sharing and kind of getting to know each other. And, throughout those, 3-hour shifts that we have, 2 or 3 of each week, she gets a lot of opportunity to, it's clearly not a therapy session. So there's kind of a more level playing field in our relationship, I feel. And what I mean by that is Lisa got a lot of opportunities to see me, how I show up in the world and, make mistakes, or how I, get frustrated or have struggles as well. So I think that was also just an important part of kind of building a level of trust and some relief from the therapy side, the kind of intense, work with her medication and with her mental states. But at the same time, throughout my time and shifts with Lisa, I get to experience a lot of variability in her mood and her ability to focus on whatever we're doing. So I get a lot of guidance and from the team, on how to interact or how to work with that. But also I get to provide some information of more of her day-to-day life that the team supervisor and team leader and psychotherapist don't see as much of. I don't know if Rebecca has anything to add to her basic attendance shifts and experience with Lisa.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking while you were talking, Connor, and also Lori, while you were talking, just kind of feeling the impact of like how much time we spend together, like in the beginning or in different phases. And also when a client is landing in a new city, in a new apartment, with just a whole new world, like I'm there, like like I am meeting a new friend. You know, it's like, how can we support this person landing in a new place? You know, what's it like to be in their apartment? How are they relating to their environment? And, you know, what are the kind of the simple things that we can do together that support this kind of like grounding and joining this new space for them. And I think of it also as like really slow work, which I think can be kind of irritating for some clients. Just the slow pace of getting to know each other, and them always wondering like, what are we actually doing here? Like when we take a drive in the car or with no destination, or we take a hike together, or you're driving me around town just to like, you know, see these sights and pointing out the smells and the sounds and just like getting to know the environment can be so supportive to just getting here and feeling somewhat, I don't know, some level of normalcy, you know, just to have another person as a guide.
So Rebecca, what you were, and Connor, I think especially, well, actually you, Connor, Lori, and Becca to some extent, you're really holding and helping develop the ordinary life landing in the community. And while I think the rest of you are definitely forming really strong and necessary relationships, you're attending more specifically to some of the clinical, not that the team counselors and housemate aren't, and team leader aren't, but there's I think a focus on ordinary life that comes into the folks that are in more of the day-to-day basic attendance roles. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
I also think too, like, you know, the team's interest in Lisa's passions helped support some confidence building and exploration, and in regards to her then having success in a way where she felt kind of maybe defeated by, but then recognized like the gift of that, and I think felt able to then like venture out into her own explorations into that, and had good success with it, which I think led to, you know, other confidence in, you know, getting a job, and I have a feeling like that could happen, and did. So and I just want to say too, like going back to Lori, you being a housemate in these early stages of the team really was grounding. I don't know if that's too much of a strange word, but like landing in a new town, very ordinary, your sense of like really being interested in Lisa as a person, and just being your ordinary self in that space helped her relax. So that it felt like a really important piece of the beginning of Lisa you know, feeling able to relax and begin looking at some of the harder things that she had to.
thank you, Becca, for how that grounding process happened, and then how Lisa began to feel a little bit more confident. So the middle part of her treatment was that she began participating also in community programs. And she worked with DVR to find employment. She started a part-time job at a local movie theater. She wanted to try living without a housemate after 6 months, and the team decided to give this a try. The number of basic attendance shifts went to 1 shift per day. She initially had a few incidents of inviting men over for one-night stands with this newfound freedom again. But through various conversations with her team members and therapists, she realized that wasn't in her best interest, and her boundaries improved. She continued smoking marijuana recreationally. It also became apparent that she needed support around budgeting, and a Windhorse account was created to help her manage her paychecks from her job now. And speaking from the point of view of the psychotherapist, as a young adult, she was experiencing in the last probably 5 years this difference in her compared to people she grew up with. Although she had a college degree, she just wasn't advancing in a career the way her classmates were. She wasn't getting married or having kids. None of that was happening for her. And her self-esteem really suffered through that process. And being in and out of episodes, in and out of different treatment centers, that was really, really hard on her self-esteem. And so, Becca, what you were talking about, and Rebecca, what you were talking about around these relationships forming and reflecting her strengths, she slowly, ever so slowly, started getting a little bit more confidence. And rather than having so many messages to herself like, you're a loser, you'll never amount to anything, spending time with the team members was vital in turning that around a little bit. And so, yeah, maybe some of us could speak to that as we talk more about the middle stages of treatment. And then Jack, in your perspective, kind of holding the whole team and working with the family, what do you think about that?
Again, I'm kind of I'm further back than the rest of the team members, and so a lot of my view is watching the overall grouping. So I'm really in this middle phase, keeping an eye on how the relationships are developing, between Lisa and the various team members and their roles. There's also the kind of money considerations of the team, the tension between the team needing to contract for family financial reasons, and also what size of the team is actually accurate. And so I'm always looking at that, and also it's not always optimizing things for the how would I put it, like the team members that the client likes the most. This often comes up when you reduce team counselors. You don't necessarily reduce the person that the client has the most struggle with. Often the person they have struggle with, they also are learning a great deal from. So you don't want to just remove, points of struggle in the team. So I'm trying to track all of that and also stay out of the way of all of you and your relationships and the things you're doing. I think that's really important for, in my role, is to watch it all, pay attention, stay out of the way, let things happen that I don't necessarily aren't. I'm like, it's natural to make a plan of where things are going to go. So it doesn't always go where I planned it would go, but it goes where it needs to go. And so I'm always trying to balance these elements. And then maybe I could say something about team, that part of what supports this, because often it's not uncommon that families wonder what the good of a team supervisor is, because they don't seem to interact with their loved one as much as everybody else. So why have them? Well, and this is somewhat unique to a Windhorse team, is that I represent an integrating, synchronizing element that I know all of you very well, and I'm trying to keep things synchronized. And my main points of doing that are calls with the family, sometimes calls with the family and the client, contact occasionally with like Earl, with the psychiatrist, and then also weekly team meetings that would include all of us and the client, and then also a kind of a leadership meeting we call the team planning meeting, which is, in this case, is me and Jeannie and Becca. In there, we can really talk through these things.
I want to say that in this middle kind of part of treatment, right, where I've spent a lot of time with this client and I've, built rapport with them, and they start confiding in me, or they're telling me about, meeting men and bringing them into their apartment and what that's like for them. In my role, I'm not the therapist, and I might even share a little bit about like how I relate to boundaries or how I relate to dating. And then being able to go to the team meeting and ask for support, either from the team leader or get direct support from, the therapist or the supervisor around like how to stay in relationship, without, and support this client in finding their way through this, as opposed to like, intervening or doing something harmful. Really getting, the support from the team makes all the difference in this process, both so that I can relax with what's happening with the client, and maybe they can relax too.
I wonder if others could talk about what it means to be in a team meeting and what that process is like.
I had a couple of team meetings that I attended in the sort of middle of treatment that were pretty revelatory for me, in seeing the sort of affection that had developed within the team. And it showed me a side of Lisa that I hadn't known about, because there was such a enjoyment between Lisa and the team members. Not always, not all the time, but remarkably so. A real appreciation of each other, and it was really eye-opening for me about her capacities for connectedness and kind of the vitality and enjoyment. And so I don't know that I would have caught on to that if I hadn't attended some of those.
That's great. You got to see her health in action.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Nice.
So I can say that during this middle period, that Lisa had, begun working. I think that was mentioned that she had gotten a job at a movie theater, and part of one of the perks of that was she could get discounted movie viewings. So that became a sort of shift activity, and it kind of reinstigated her her kind of interest in acting, going to see these movies and watching the actors on screen, and it kind of reminded her of her history with that, and she developed this kind of a goal to bring that back into her life. So being able to share that, that's what I was observing on my shifts with Lisa, with the rest of the team. There could be a lot more support and helping her move towards some of those goals that really seemed very healthy for her, and allowed her to kind of have something to focus on that she was passionate about and proud of, something that she had a history with, but had kind of taken a back seat during some of the more intense struggles that she experienced in the early period.
Thanks, Connor. I have some memories with Lisa, and for one, like, because Rebecca, Connor, and Lori like do spend a significant amount of time and getting us all in the same room, and really appreciating like each of us is very different, and some were like an easier natural fit right from the get-go, and some developed over time. And Earl was talking about the capacity. Like, I feel like Lisa's capacity for relationship, and maybe not chosen right off the bat relationship, like expanded Lisa's ability actually to work with potential conflict. And that even happened in work environments, and like expanded out. Like, so how do you have a challenging conversation? How do you not just write somebody out of your life and say, I don't like this person, so F them, I'm not going to talk to them. So, but like really developing capacity to and not be afraid of arguments, and that they could become possible. Like, because Lisa didn't at the first didn't come to the team meetings, and then began coming, and over time, like, Lisa really engaged, like, in a very very, what do I want to say, was very much a part of the meetings, and got to see how we related to each other, and the relationships that were different. It began to feel more like a team, and not just centered on Lisa, but on all of us as people. And I think that really aided in Lisa's capacity.
I would second that. Yeah, it kind of made things that we all have to face and struggle with more normal. Like for Lisa, like she thought, oh, yeah, everybody has to kind of think about how they deal with conflict, not just me. And so as a team, sometimes we would discuss and share, maybe like even go around and share, well, what do you do when somebody really bothers you at work? How do you handle that? And yeah, that would just make that whole process so much more kind of ordinary for her to think about, and then again, not kind of thinking that she was just such the sick person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I think the beauty of the team meeting too is that all of us from our different roles and seats are encouraged to speak candidly to what we're seeing and what we're experiencing. And we don't all have the same relationship with Lisa or any client. We don't have the same background. And so sometimes we disagree, like, wow, you're seeing that. I'm not seeing that at all. And so a space to actually air that and work through it is really important for us, you know, as a team, and also for Lisa or any client to sit in that and go, oh yeah, these people have to struggle with that too. I'm not so different. They're not so different. So I love that about team meetings.
It really just creates a picture of Lisa, you know, that we wouldn't have, you know, individually.
Right.
That was really helpful to hear all that about the team meetings, and I think it's representative of teams or of meetings altogether, because there's varieties of them. But I think two things were standing out for me. One is you all have individual relationships with Lisa. At the same time, to come together as a group, the intelligence of the group starts to form, and it potentiates, I think, the power of the team to actually do a more creative, resilient job of adapting to her needs, as her recovery needs, as she moves on her path. So it's the meeting really ups the intelligence of the team in a serious way. And there's another piece of this that is, I think, pretty unusual for that Windhorse incorporates, which is that while of course this is organized around our clients and their families, if you don't keep everybody reasonably healthy in a long-term recovery process, you start really diminishing the power to create healing for the person and their family. So this is one of the ways we also keep ourselves more healthy and kind of awake. You know, it really helps with things like burnout and stuff when you're working, you know, in the sometimes the ruggedness of one of these paths.
One thing I've been struck by as we've been talking is, I think, a real evolution from really a sick role to a self-view as a personal health, and I think it's been really striking in this situation. So I think when we got Lisa was a sort of a professional patient, and no longer. Some of what you were talking about, well, what everyone has talked about, but I think this came to me as you were talking, Becca, kind of sharing this space with these functioning people and realizing, hey, I'm a functioning person too. I'm like them. I don't know. I'm fumbling the words, but it's been striking in this process.
That was really nicely put. And I think so much of what the power of a team is, we create a relationship environment that really invites people to help, as opposed to kind of pushing them as much. We definitely do a little of that, but just like you're describing, Beck, and everybody, it's we form relationships and we start mixing it up in life, and there's therapeutic issues that run all through this. You can't separate, you know, a person's mood regulation from how they respond to somebody at work, for instance. It's all tied up, and how they sleep and how they eat, and you know, all that. So, and
part of the role of the team supervisor is to help the family keep understanding this. And I'm back on this, that I was thinking of how in teams, an objection sometimes I hear is, well, you should be getting your supervision is separate from your work as a clinician and therapist and team members. Like, you all should be getting supervision, but somewhere else. This is where Windhorse is different, that we there isn't such a distinction between clinical supervision and working with a particular client. It's actually clinical, you could say clinical supervision that's specifically focused all around the nuances of this person and how they're interacting within the team. And that's often my job as the team supervisor, to help the family understand that. Sometimes families understand that without a problem, and they appreciate that. Other families really want to separate those out, and we may not be as good a fit for that kind of family system, actually, that wants to have the more formal, complete separation of, in this case, of supervision from the clinical work. We're relational and also very personal, and like this becomes, as you all are pointing out, a very personal group of people, and it can become very personal between me and my role with the family. And one thing is, and maybe some of you can speak to this, is like bringing the family, my relationships with the parents. I start to bring that energy into the team meetings also, which is an interesting wrinkle to the team meeting, because I might be holding a position that is quite different from the way all the other team members are, but I'm representing and bringing in how the family, the parents would want to speak up in the moment. So
I spend most of my time as a team supervisor as well. And it's a really big part of our job to make sure we understand, we don't know what necessarily is the best thing that's going to happen here. Like oftentimes, Lori, I've been, you as a housemate, I've been in a situation where you put your finger right on something that's going on that I need to be really paying attention to as a person in power in the situation. It's like, oh boy, you just hit the nail on the head there. And so we really work with paying attention to power, and that is all coming together in a team meeting. And so anyway, I appreciate everybody kind of jumping in from their perspectives here.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about our ending stage of treatment with Lisa. After 2 years with us, Lisa was steady with her job, and she also auditioned for a part in the Shakespeare Festival, which she got. Her mother's funds for long-term treatment were limited, and so the team had to reduce to psychotherapy only. She continued to receive support with her meds and money management, but eventually these were turned back over to her with success. She had made a few friends outside of Windhorse with whom she now socialized regularly in town with. But I want to say this end stage of treatment often represents a dilemma for a client. Lisa could notice her advancements, being able to work and hold a steady job and return to acting to some degree. However, all of these things and forming new friendships with people on the outside, all of these stages of progress are very challenging. And the dilemma was whether to kind of, there was certainly a lot of nice feedback that she got from her successes, but at the same time, it was scary. And so there's progress and there's getting well again. And then there's all kinds of fears come up around both taking risks in society and then losing the supports that she had in place from the team members. And so that's a real dilemma and quite a bridge to cross. And so I wonder if the team members could speak to, their endings or, kind of reducing contact over time and what that feels like, and the process of navigating that push and pull between getting well and staying sick, getting well and losing people that you love. How that goes.
Well, one of the ways Lisa and I were able to keep a connection. I mean, what was is through community programs. And it was hard actually to say goodbye. And because real attachments had happened. And I feel like we were able to offer some opportunities to honor that to acknowledge that relationships had been created and made, and that it doesn't mean the relationship didn't happen or is over and done and, you know, forever, but it's going to be different. Yeah. I don't know if Lori or Connor or Rebecca have any comments.
Well, I'll just say that, yeah, it's always hard, and as you said, Becca, that, you know, we do take opportunity to kind of acknowledge our time together, and also that the endings are pretty, they're planned by the team. They're gradual. They're not. It's not a sudden, out of nowhere change. So they're hard, but it's also good. It's what we're there for. We know we're not going to be spending, you know, week after week forever with this client.
I think when I ended as a housemate, I felt two things simultaneously. I wanted my freedom back. It was nice, you know. There felt like a tremendous responsibility to be a housemate and to be on a team. So there was that relief, like, oh, I can have my own place. I can direct my own life. I don't need to be concerned about a person as they went through some really hard, scary stuff. And at the same time, there's grief. Like you know, you come to care about people and to see them struggle at a really deep level. Especially when you're a housemate, you see it up close and daily. So it was hard, and you know, it's hard for the client too, because you're, you know, you're there in their life in a way that most people aren't. So it's all good. It's what we do. It's why we work the way we do, but it's still hard.
I was just thinking again about just for my own life, like this practice of ending here, like it's such a gift to learn how to say goodbye, you know, to learn how to appreciate what was had and move on from that. And I think, like, just in my own life, like when I'm starting something or when I'm ending something is when I tend to speed up the most, and then so I don't have to feel everything.
Mhm.
And so that's a real gift here, is getting that opportunity.
One of the things I think that's built into our endings is it's the result of a lot of good work. You know, people like in this case, Lisa's health increased. And I think if we don't, you know, invite them to end when we do in a way that honors that, I think oftentimes it can communicate that we don't think they can. And so just how to have a light, balanced touch with supporting, but also, you know, encouraging into life outside of the structure of a team, which in this case, for a period, there was you, Jeannie, Earl, and Jack. And then no more. And just anything more to say on how that last transition went?
So one thing that is really remarkable is how, you know, as a team, we might have made assumptions that Lisa just couldn't get it together to manage money or medications or things like that on her own. But as the team diminished, she was given more and more freedom to take that on. And she was able to rise to the occasion. And so oftentimes clients will surprise us with what they're able to do when they kind of have to. There isn't somebody else to take up the slack anymore. And so that's a lovely stage of treatment when we see somebody rising to the occasion of taking care of themselves all on their own and really becoming more independent with all the basic things.
As well as some anxious moments in watching that take off.
Totally. And some hits and misses, you know, like there's, yeah, hits and misses can happen in that end stage. And then, you know, just getting better and better at it over time. That level of independence. Yeah.
And that goes back to the point of learning of at the end, you know, as the different roles dissolve around it, the responsibility of what, you know, the various team members helped this person with are kind of, I think of it as they're kind of reabsorbed. You know, so in this case, Lisa had to, you know, at early treatment could only really function in the world with all these auxiliary, you know, relationships that could hold her, you know, constellation of existence in the world. And then as she became stronger and her path of kind of recovery proceeded, you know, you have to do experiments where you reduce roles. That function is kind of becomes a responsibility of Lisa, and then you see if she learned and how was that, and then how does the team reconfigure if that was too big of a step? How do we support and continue that process? But ideally, and in this case successfully, all of us were reabsorbed by Lisa, and she carries on in her life.
I really believe she internalized a lot of the team members into her own mind, like that she could continue after the team even ended. She continued to be able to think about what Becca would think or what Lori would think and or say and bring those into her relationships that she formed on her own. You know,
It's like the chorus. Sometimes I tell people, we'll be interacting and I'll be about to say something and say, well, we know each other well enough. What am I going to say? You tell me, what am I about to say? And they'll say exactly what I was about to say.
exactly.
I go, look, you got the whole team inside of you still, you know, you've got this chorus.
And oftentimes we continue, you know, indefinitely with some form of therapy and psychiatry.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to continue my end of work with Lisa, continue to prescribe medication, and it's become a relationship more like what I experience in my general private practice outside of Windhorse, where I meet occasionally and we may carry on with what's working, or we may do some fine tuning, but it's given me the opportunity to see sort of the continuation of recovery beyond Windhorse. And that's been a pleasure.
Windhorse Journal is a publication of Windhorse Community Services, supporting recovery from mental health challenges at home and in the community since 1981.